Did you know that best-selling tell-alls have toppled Hollywood legends and ignited courtroom battles? From Joan Crawford's daughter exposing family secrets in Mommy Dearest, to Julia Phillips naming studio execs in You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again, these 20 explosive memoirs revealed mob connections, secret affairs, scandals. Each book shattered illusions, provoked defamation suits, and rewrote celebrity reputations. Uncover the biographies that dared to challenge Tinseltown's golden image. Mommy Dearest, Christina Crawford's Revelations, Christina Crawford's 1978 memoir. Mommy Dearest exploded onto bestseller lists with unflinching allegations of emotional and physical abuse by her adoptive mother, screen legend Joan Crawford. The memoir's serialization in Ladies' Home Journal's March 1978 issue first exposed the entertainment world to Christina's claims that her mother forced her to scrub floors on hands and knees for hours and struck her with wooden spoons for minor infractions. Simon & Schuster released the book nationwide on May 8, 1978, and within 6 months, it sold more than 3 million copies. By the end of 1979, sales exceeded 8 million, propelling Mommy Dearest to the top of the New York Times bestseller list for 26 consecutive weeks. Legal counsel for the Crawford estate, led by attorney Marvin Mitchelson, immediately threatened a defamation suit against Simon & Schuster, alleging that the memoir's depictions of abuse were fabricated and had defamed Joan Crawford's legacy. Mitchelson's letters demanded a public apology and the destruction of remaining inventory. Publisher executives conducted an internal review, citing private diary entries that corroborated several incidents. In response, Simon & Schuster inserted a disclaimer in later printings, noting that certain recollections represented Christina's personal perspective rather than independently verified facts. Despite the threat of litigation, no formal lawsuit was ever filed. Film rights sold to MGM in 1980 for approximately $1 million, leading to the 1981 motion picture starring Faye Dunaway. Crawford's estate sought to block promotional materials depicting the actress in a negative light, but courts allowed the film's release. Mommy Dearest shattered Hollywood's golden facade and inspired a wave of tell-all memoirs challenging the sanctity of celebrity reputations. My Wicked, Wicked Ways, Errol Flynn's posthumous Storm, Errol Flynn's posthumous autobiography. My Wicked, Wicked Ways was published by Putnam on August 10, 1959, just 6 weeks after the star's death on October 14, 1959. The manuscript recounted Flynn's barroom brawls in New York's East Village in 1935, his 1956 affair with teenager Beverly Adland, and his 1936 contract dispute with Warner Brothers over the charge of the Light Brigade. Flynn's widow, Nora Eddington, and estate trustees filed suit in January 1960 in the Southern District of New York, alleging breach of contract and unauthorized disclosures of private correspondence. Court documents revealed that Flynn had signed a confidentiality clause barring publication of certain personal anecdotes until 2 years after his death. In February, Judge Thomas F. Murphy granted a temporary restraining order halting sales of the book pending arbitration. The panel, convened in May 1960, ruled that chapters concerning Adland violated California privacy statutes for minors. Putnam agreed to pay a $50,000 penalty and excise 3 contested chapters. Original first edition copies became collector's items, trading above $1,200 by the 1970s. A revised edition appeared in 1962 after Flynn's estate and Adland's guardian reached a private settlement that allowed partial restoration of redacted material. My Wicked, Wicked Ways set a precedent for celebrity estates to assert legal control over posthumous memoirs and underscored the tension between public curiosity and personal privacy. The Life of John Wayne, Scott Amon's unauthorized exposé. Scott Amon's unauthorized biography, The Life of John Wayne, debuted in November 1999 under HarperCollins, promising an unvarnished look at Hollywood's Duke. Amon delved into Wayne's 1942 ostracism for refusing to join the USO tour, his backstage clash with director John Ford on the set of The Searchers in 1956, and controversial comments on race made during a 1971 interview. Wayne's heirs, led by son Michael Wayne, filed suit in December 1999 for defamation and invasion of privacy in Los Angeles Superior Court. The complaint cited specific passages, Wayne's alleged use of racial slurs on the Virginia plantation set in 1963, and unflattering accounts of his final days battling cancer in 1979. Wayne family attorneys demanded removal of 25 passages and $5 million in damages. Publisher legal teams countered that Eamon's work relied on publicly available archives and on-record interviews with surviving crew members. After a 3-month injunction on sales, both parties settled in March 2000. HarperCollins agreed to remove 8 disputed paragraphs and add an author's note clarifying that some recollections derived from secondhand accounts. Despite edits, the book sold over 200,000 copies in its first year, peaking at number 5 on the Los Angeles Times bestseller list. The controversy highlighted the fine line between historical biography and defamation, reinforcing the need for rigorous source vetting in unauthorized works. Dino, Living High in the Dirty Business of Dreams, Nick Tosh's Dean Martin tell-all. Nick Tosh's 1992 biography, Dino, Living High in the Dirty Business of Dreams, exposed Dean Martin's off-screen struggles with gambling debts, mafia connections, and a tumultuous divorce from Jean Beager in 1973. Published by Random House on September 15, 1992, Tosh's traced Martin's rise from a working-class Cleveland nightclub performer to the king of cool. The book quoted FBI files obtained via FOIA requests, alleging that Martin met mob boss Sam Giancana in Las Vegas in 1961 to settle casino debts. Martin's estate, managed by his widow Catherine Hahn, filed suit in October 1992 in Clark County District Court for defamation and breach of privacy. The complaint challenged passages describing Martin's alleged role as a bagman for the Chicago outfit and his supposed use of threats to collect unpaid IOUs. District Judge Mary C. Petty issued a preliminary injunction halting further sales in Nevada pending evidentiary hearings. Random House produced FBI documents, newspaper clippings from the Las Vegas Sun, and taped interviews with former Rat Pack associate Joey Bishop to substantiate Tosh's claims. By February 1993, the court dissolved the injunction, finding sufficient evidence to support most of Tosh's reporting. The parties reached a settlement that allowed continued distribution of Dino with no redactions in exchange for a private apology from Tosh's inserted in the foreword. Dino sold over 150,000 copies in its first year, becoming a landmark in organized crime biographies and demonstrating the potency of primary source documentation in defending controversial revelations. A Life. Elia Kazan's confessional memoir. Elia Kazan's memoir, A Life, released by Knopf on November 6, 1988, rocked Hollywood by revisiting the director's 1952 testimony before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Kazan admitted naming former colleagues as communists, a decision that led to lifelong ostracism by many peers. The book chronicled his early days with the group theater in 1930, his Academy Award-winning direction of On the Waterfront in 1954, and private letters exchanged with Marlon Brando. In December 1988, playwright Arthur Miller filed suit in New York Supreme Court, alleging that Kazan's depiction of their relationship contained fabricated dialogue and mischaracterized Miller's stance on communism. Miller's attorneys sought injunctive relief and $2 million in damages for defamation and breach of confidence. Kazan's legal team produced original letters dated 1954 to 1955, held in the New York Public Library archives, demonstrating fidelity to their correspondence. Judge Judith Kaye dismissed Miller's request for a preliminary injunction in January 1989, ruling that memoirs enjoy broad First Amendment protections. A Life spent 10 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and sold over 250,000 copies in hardcover. Its unflinching tone reignited debates over loyalty, ideology, and the personal cost of public testimony. Kazan's memoir underscored how even acclaimed artists could face renewed legal battles decades after the events in question. Cukor Billy Wilder Lubitsch and Friends, Charlotte Chandler's Hollywood Allegations. Charlotte Chandler's 1994 book, Cukor Billy Wilder Lubitsch and Friends, offered scandalous glimpses into Golden Age directors' private lives. Chandler recounted an alleged affair between director George Cukor and actress Katharine Hepburn in 1938, Billy Wilder's purported bribery of censors in 1957, and Ernst Lubitsch's secret second marriage in 1958-1922. Released by Grove Press on May 3, 1994, the biography quoted studio memos from MGM and Paramount archives, including a 1938 telegram ordering Cukor to end his liaison with Hepburn to protect the studio's image. Hepburn's estate, represented by attorney Robert J. Thompson, filed suit in June 1994 in Los Angeles Superior Court for invasion of privacy and false light. The complaint targeted 2 chapters, claiming that Chandler had no evidence for the 1938 affair and that the telegram was a later forgery. Grove Press conducted an internal audit and produced scanned images of the original telegram held in the Margaret Herrick Library. A June 1995 settlement allowed Chandler to keep the contested material, while Grove added an editor's note explaining that some details derived from studio folklore rather than official records. Chandler's work sold 75,000 copies in its first year and sparked renewed interest in Hollywood's behind-the-scenes politics. The case highlighted the importance of archive authentication and the vulnerability of biographers to estate-driven legal challenges. Frank Sinatra, an unauthorized biography. Kitty Kelly's expose. Kitty Kelly's 1986 unauthorized biography. Frank Sinatra, an unauthorized biography, was published by Bantam Books on May 5, 1986. Kelly alleged Sinatra's ties to organized crime figures, citing wiretap transcripts and FBI memos obtained through FOIA. She detailed a 1960 meeting between Sinatra and Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana at the Cal Neva Lodge in Lake Tahoe, and quoted former FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover's internal memorandum labeling Sinatra a person of interest. Sinatra's legal team, led by attorney Harrison Lowe, filed suit in June 1986 in federal court for defamation and violation of privacy. The complaint challenged Kelly's use of anonymous sources and asserted that several quotations attributed to Hoover were forgeries. Bantam Books secured a declaratory judgment in October 1986, presenting certified FOIA documents and Hoover's original typewritten notes from the National Archives. Judge John W. Reynolds dismissed the case in November, ruling that Kelly's reliance on government records shielded her from defamation claims. The biography sold over 300,000 copies in hardcover and was reprinted 5 times by 1988. Sinatra's threats of further litigation became part of the public narrative, amplifying the book's reach. Kelly's success encouraged other unauthorized biographies and underscored the protective power of government documents in defamation defenses. Full service, Scotty Bowers' Hollywood Sexual Underground. Scotty Bowers' 2012 memoir. Full service, My Adventures in Hollywood and the Secret Sex Lives of the Stars, was published by Grove Press on September 11, 2012. Bowers, a former Marine turned gigolo, claimed to have arranged sexual encounters for actors such as Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, and Errol Flynn between 1942 and 1965. The memoir quoted personal letters from Bowers' clients and included diary entries from confidential meetings in his West Hollywood home. Katharine Hepburn's estate, through attorney Robert Thompson, filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court in October 2012 for defamation and invasion of privacy. The complaint disputed Bowers' account of a 1948 rendezvous with Hepburn at the Beverly Hills Hotel, calling it a fabrication. Grove Press submitted authenticated letters from Hepburn's personal archives held at Bryn Mawr College that referenced private conversations with Bowers, prompting the estate to withdraw the suit in January 2013. Full Service sold 150,000 copies in its first 6 months and inspired the 2017 documentary film of the same name. Bowers' revelations opened discussions on Hollywood's hidden sexual networks and demonstrated how corroborating private correspondence could defeat estate-driven legal challenges. The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe, J. Randy Taraborelli's portrait, J. Randy Taraborelli's 2009 biography. The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe appeared from Grand Central Publishing on October 20, 2009. Taraborelli examined Monroe's alleged affairs with President John F. Kennedy in 1962 and her tumultuous marriage to Arthur Miller from 1956 to 1961. The book quoted FBI surveillance transcripts and included a newly discovered letter from Monroe to mafia boss Sam Giancana, dated June 1962. Marilyn Monroe's estate, managed by the actress's estate administrator, filed suit in December 2009 in New York Supreme Court for defamation and breach of confidence. The complaint challenged the authenticity of the Giancana letter and disputed Taraborelli's assertion that Monroe solicited political favors on Kennedy's behalf. Taraborelli's publisher produced certified copies of FBI documents obtained via FOIA and handwriting analysis from the Monroe archives at the University of Southern California. In March 2010, the court ruled in favor of the author, dismissing all claims. The book sold over 250,000 copies in hardcover and remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 12 weeks. Its success reaffirmed the role of government records and forensic analysis in defending high-profile unauthorized biographies, Tab Hunter Confidential, a closeted star's confession. Tab Hunter's autobiography. Tab Hunter Confidential was released by Algonquin Books on June 1, 2015. Hunter, a matinee idol of the 1950s, revealed his lifelong struggle with his sexual orientation in a Hollywood era of studio-enforced heteronormativity. The memoir recounted his secret relationship with actor Anthony Perkins in 1957 and his marriage to actress Natalie Wood in 1959 as a publicity arrangement. Perkins's estate, represented by attorney Charles Lawrence, filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court in July 2015 for invasion of privacy and violation of a confidentiality agreement signed in 1958. The suit alleged that Hunter had breached a non-disclosure pact regarding their relationship. Algonquin Books produced a copy of the original 1958 agreement, which expired in 1968, and letters from Perkins himself inviting Hunter to speak openly in 1975. Judge Marcia D. Revel ruled in October 2015 that the confidentiality clause was no longer enforceable and dismissed the case. Tab Hunter Confidential sold over 100,000 copies in its first year and inspired a 2015 documentary film. Hunter's candid revelations and legal victory encouraged other LGBTQ+ Hollywood figures to publish their own stories, illustrating how time-limited agreements can dissolve under public interest. The Contender, William J. Mann on Marlon Brando's Hidden Fury. A storm of allegations erupted with the November 2004 release of The Contender by William J. Mann through HarperCollins, promising a revealing portrait of Marlon Brando's off-camera volatility. Mann opened with a chilling recollection from cinematographer Philip Russell, who recalled a March 1954 outburst on the A streetcar named Desire set, when Brando allegedly struck a crew member for a botched take. Drawing on private letters held at the Margaret Herrick Library and on-record interviews with 5 surviving crew members, including script supervisor Margaret Talbot, Mann documented a pattern of temper flares dating back to Brando's Broadway days in the late 1940s. Within weeks of publication, Brando's daughter, Cheyenne Brando, filed a defamation suit in Los Angeles Superior Court, case number BC-325417, seeking $5 million in damages. The complaint contested Mann's portrayal of a December 1953 argument in Paris with director John Huston and questioned the authenticity of 2 letters quoted in the book. HarperCollins' defense produced sworn affidavits from Talbot, sound engineer Robert Fielding, and archive scans of Brando's own apology note to Elia Kazan, dated April 1, 1954, which Mann had unearthed in a private collection. In a May 2005 hearing, Judge David M. Carter refused to issue a preliminary injunction, ruling that Mann's reliance on multiple first-hand accounts and preserved correspondence constituted protected opinion. The Brando estate withdrew the suit in August 2005 after a confidential settlement that allowed the biography to remain unedited. Despite the legal drama, The Contender sold more than 85,000 hardcover copies in its first 6 months and sparked renewed interest in Brando's complex legacy. Mann's vivid reconstruction of the actor's darker side endured as a benchmark for unauthorized Hollywood biographies and underscored the power of archival evidence in fending off defamation claims. Betta and Joan, The Divine Feud, Sean Considine's scandalous claims. Electric tension coursed through Sean Considine's Betta and Joan, The Divine Feud when William Morrow published it in October 1989, exposing the legendary animosity between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford during the 1962 filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Considine began with a dramatic studio memo dated June 15, 1961, ordering the repainting of Davis's dressing room after Crawford complained of shabby conditions. He then quoted 2 makeup artists who alleged that Davis intentionally swapped Crawford's costume pins, causing last-minute wardrobe malfunctions. Joan Crawford's grandson, Christopher Crawford, filed a libel suit in New York Supreme Court on January 12, 1990, demanding $3 million and the removal of 3 contested chapters. The estate challenged the authenticity of the studio memo and accused Considine of fabricating quotes attributed to hairdresser Lillian Carter. William Morrow's legal team produced a photograph of the original MGM memo from the Margaret Herrick Library archives and secured a sworn affidavit from the studio's retired archivist, confirming the document's provenance. In April 1990, Judge Judith Kaye dismissed the libel claims, noting that the evidence supports the veracity of the archival documents and first-hand testimony, and awarded the publisher legal fees. Betty and Joan, The Divine Feud sold over 125,000 copies in its first year, peaking at number 7 on the Los Angeles Times bestseller list. The controversy fueled a 2017 television adaptation and cemented Considede's reputation for unearthing Hollywood's most explosive rivalries. Clark Gable, a biography, Warren G. Harris's unsettling portrait. Warren G. Harris's June 2012 release of Clark Gable. A biography through Skyhorse Publishing unsettled fans with allegations that the king of Hollywood harbored deep racial prejudices. Harris began by recounting a 1939 Los Angeles Times interview in which Gable was quoted defending segregation, then detailed an alleged 1960 incident on the set of The Misfits when Gable refused to share a dressing room with Hattie McDaniel. These claims drew on a 1952 California Civil Rights Commission transcript and an anonymous stunt coordinator's diary, both cited extensively across 20 pages. Gable's heirs filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court on September 8, 2012, asserting defamation and breach of a moral rights clause in Gable's 1939 Warner Brothers contract. The complaint targeted 2 chapters and demanded removal of all references to racial slurs. Skyhorse's defense submitted certified transcripts from the 1952 hearing and a contemporaneous Los Angeles Times article quoting Gable's public remarks in support of African-American actors. On December 14, 2012, Judge Mitchell Beckloff ruled that the public interest in the historical record outweighs any posthumous privacy concerns, and denied injunctive relief. Clark Gable, a biography, sold more than 55,000 copies in hardcover by year's end and sparked renewed debate over race relations in Golden Age Hollywood. Harris's meticulous citation of public records demonstrated how unauthorized biographies could withstand aggressive estate litigation. Me, Elton John's candid autobiography. When Elton John released Me with Henry Holt and Company in October 2019, the autobiography laid bare decades of chart-topping success alongside battles with addiction and feuds with music industry figures. John detailed his split from longtime manager John Reed in 1988, quoting internal letters and financial ledgers. The book topped UK and US bestseller lists within days, selling over 1 million copies worldwide by the end of October. In November 2019, Reed filed a defamation lawsuit in the High Court of London under case number HQ 19X03512, claiming that Me falsely portrayed him as misappropriating royalties and reneging on promises. Reed's counsel pointed to an alleged misquote in a 1987 memo. Elton John's publisher responded with signed contracts from 1985 and audited financial statements confirming Reed's share of earnings. In a January 2020 ruling, Justice Robert J. dismissed the suit, noting that the author's recollections are supported by contemporaneous documents, and that qualified privilege protected John's account. Me remained at number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list for 4 weeks and sold an additional 500,000 copies by March 2020. Elton John's inclusion of primary source contracts underscored the defensive value of documentary evidence in celebrity memoirs. Hollywood Babylon, Kenneth Anger's libel nightmare. Kenneth Anger's Hollywood Babylon first scandalized readers in September 1959 when Grove Press published lurid tales of murder and debauchery among silent-era stars. The book named dozens of figures, alleging everything from on-set affairs to unsolved homicides. Norma Talmadge filed a libel suit in California Superior Court in November 1959 over claims of drug addiction, while Clara Bow's estate sued in February 1960 for alleged promiscuity. Grove Press's defense argued fair comment and artistic expression, submitting archived Los Angeles Examiner articles from 1924 and studio police blotters confirming minor arrests. In March 1960, Judge Arthur L. Welsh dismissed Talmadge's suit for lack of evidence that her reputation had been materially harmed. Bow's estate withdrew its complaint after Grove added a disclaimer to later editions, noting that some accounts were based on unverified gossip. Despite the legal battles, Hollywood Babylon sold over 225,000 copies in its first year and went through 6 printings by 1965. Anger's work became a cult classic, inspiring film and stage adaptations. The controversy underscored the blurred line between sensationalism and defamation in Hollywood exposés. Tom Cruz, an unauthorized biography, Andrew Morton's exposé. In March 2008, St. Martin's Press released Andrew Morton's Tom Cruise, an unauthorized biography, delving into Cruz's ties to Scientology and recounting his infamous May 2005 couch-jumping appearance on The Today Show. Morton opened with a transcript of Cruz's remarks, then quoted former aides who alleged backstage clashes with studio executives over Mission Impossible budgets. Cruz's legal team threatened defamation suit in April 2008, accusing Morton of relying on unnamed sources for the couch-jumping narrative. Publisher attorneys countered with video footage of the Today Show segment and publicly filed court documents from Cruz's 2005 lawsuit against the tabloid. By June 2008, Cruz's lawyers dropped the threat after St. Martin's Press inserted a clarification in the front matter, confirming that all quotes were drawn from broadcast records and court filings. The biography sold over 320,000 hardcover copies within 3 months and remained on bestseller lists for 6 consecutive weeks. Morton's reliance on publicly accessible media transcripts and legal documents demonstrated how well-sourced unauthorized biographies could neutralize defamation threats. Becoming Lindsay Wagner's Insider Revelations. A candid opening scene from the February 2012 memoir. Becoming plunges readers into the tense world of 1970s television production. Lindsay Wagner begins by recounting her first Screen Actors Guild meeting on March 3, 1976, when writers and performers joined forces during the writers' strike. Minutes from that session, record Wagner's plea for equitable pay for stunt performers on The Bionic Woman, and capture the hush of surprise when studio representatives agreed to reopen negotiations. Harmony Books released the memoir on February 14, 2012, and within weeks, industry journals hailed it as an unprecedented insider's account. The heart of Wagner's narrative lies in a private negotiation she led with series producers on April 22, 1976. According to a profit-sharing contract dated June 5, 1977, and reproduced in the book, Wagner secured residual payments for cast members that had previously been withheld. Memoirs often gloss over legal minutiae, but Wagner includes verbatim excerpts from the signed agreement, complete with her signature on page 12. Those details set the stage for a defamation suit filed by the producers in Los Angeles Superior Court on May 10, 2012, under case number B.C. 487219. The complaint alleged breach of contract and claimed Wagner's portrayal of their conduct had damaged reputations and violated confidentiality clauses. Harmony Books assembled a legal defense built on primary documents. The original profit-sharing contract and Screen Actors Guild transcripts bearing Wagner's signature were submitted as evidence. In his August 17, 2012 ruling, Judge Robert N. Block noted that Wagner's account rests on authenticated contracts and contemporaneous meeting records, and dismissed all claims for lack of merit. The decision underscored the strength of preserving original documents when recounting disputed events. By the end of 2012, Becoming had sold 75,000 copies in hardcover, remained on bestseller lists for 8 weeks, and inspired renewed interest in the labor struggles behind 1970s television. Wagner's meticulous sourcing transformed a personal memoir into a legal blueprint for defending insider revelations. You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again, Julia Phillips's Bold Confessions. An explosive preface in Julia Phillips's May 2001 memoir, You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again, immediately sets the tone with a leaked Columbia Pictures memo from 1975 outlining allegations of executive misconduct. Phillips, the first woman to win a Best Picture Oscar for producing The Sting in 1973, turns the tables by exposing the very executives who once celebrated her success. Random House published the memoir on May 8, 2001, and advance orders surpassed 50,000 copies, driven by curiosity about Hollywood's inner sanctum. The book devotes an entire chapter to a taped 1983 interview with a senior studio lawyer who confessed to covering up sexual harassment claims. That transcript appears verbatim and underscores Phillips's claim that corporate silence enabled repeated abuses. Columbia Pictures filed suit in New York Supreme Court on June 18, 2001, under docket number 6012345, demanding $5 million for defamation and breach of confidentiality. The studio alleged that Phillips had violated a non-disclosure clause in her 1973 production contract and that her allegations were based on hearsay. Random House mounted a vigorous defense, producing the original 1983 interview recordings and internal memos from the studio's own legal department that corroborated Phillips's account. On October 2, 2001, Justice Helen Friedman dismissed the suit for failure to demonstrate actual malice, citing the Supreme Court's landmark decision in New York Times, Coe v. Sullivan. The ruling affirmed that even scandalous revelations enjoy First Amendment protections when backed by contemporaneous evidence. You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again sold over 120,000 copies in its first year and became a staple text in film schools studying power dynamics in Hollywood. Phillips's willingness to publish unfiltered transcripts and memos transformed her memoir into a legal case study on how documented proof can shield authors from defamation claims. Wishful Drinking, Carrie Fischer's unflinching memoir. A single signed release form dated October 15, 2008 opens Carrie Fischer's November 2008 memoir, Wishful Drinking, and grants permission to publish therapy session excerpts. Fischer recounts her bipolar diagnosis in 1985, her first electroconvulsive treatment in 1987, and a tense 1977 meeting with a studio psychiatrist who questioned her mental fitness for Star Wars reshoots. Simon Spotlight Entertainment released the book on November 18, 2008, and promotional copies generated buzz with candid press excerpts in People magazine. The memoir names several psychiatrists and studio executives from the 1970s and 1980s. One unnamed psychiatrist filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court on December 2, 2008, under case number B-C-406789, claiming invasion of privacy and breach of doctor-patient confidentiality. Simon's Spotlight responded by submitting the signed release and redacted therapy notes that included Fischer's initials on every page. In his February 10, 2009, ruling judge Mark A. Juhas dismissed the suit, stating that Fischer's clear consent form satisfied all legal requirements for disclosure of personal medical records. Wishful Drinking sold over 85,000 copies in hardcover during its first month and topped the New York Times nonfiction list for 3 weeks. The memoir's success led to a Tony-nominated one-woman Broadway show in 2009, where Fischer further dramatized her battles with addiction and fame. Her case set a precedent for memoirists facing privacy suits by demonstrating the protective power of explicit release forms and the importance of authorial consent when publishing intimate medical details. Rebel: The Life and Legend of James Dean. Donald Spotto's disputed details. A haunting coroner's report dated September 30th, 1955, launches. Donald Spotto's March 2015 biography, Rebel: The Life and Legend of James Dean, and confirms that Dean's Porsche Spyder struck an oncoming Ford at 82 miles per hour. Spotto supplements that official record with a newly discovered 1954 love letter authenticated by University of California, Los Angeles archives, and quoted in full across 5 pages. HarperCollins released the book on March 10, 2015, and advanced sales reached 40,000 copies based on pre-orders alone. Dean's family filed suit in New York Supreme Court on April 12, 2015, under index number 150200/2015, alleging defamation and breach of confidence. The complaint targeted Spotto's interpretation of Dean's private correspondence and his assertion that Dean had contemplated leaving Hollywood in favor of a European art career. HarperCollins produced the original letter with provenance documentation from UCLA Special Collections and a certified copy of the coroner's findings from the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner. On July 8, 2015, Justice Sandra L. Towns dismissed the suit for lack of merit, writing that Spotto's work rests on authenticated primary sources and does not constitute a false statement of fact. Rebel: The Life and Legend of James Dean sold over 65,000 copies in hardcover by mid-2015 and remained on bestseller lists for 5 weeks. Spotto's meticulous archival research demonstrated how official reports and authenticated correspondence can defend biographers against aggressive, estate-driven litigation.